on this edition of the Center of It All. With today's challenging job market, we'll check in with the folks at CPI to see one of the hottest career opportunities around. And Penn State's Metabolic Kitchen is here to help kids make wise food choices. And the Nittany Lions' new main man, James Franklin, is leading Penn State through its first spring practice with him at the helm. And Mel has an amazing take on an American classic. All these stories coming up next on the Center of It All. Welcome to the Center of It All. There's no doubt that today's job market's more challenging than ever, and our Andrew Callista paid a visit to CPI in Bellefonte to learn more about one of the hottest career opportunities around.
Pennsylvania has a 6.4% unemployment rate, which is below the national average, but it ranks 48 out of 50 states in a 12-month job creation cycle. One industry that's always in demand is CDL drivers. And if you're in the market for a new job or even looking for your first job, CPI in Pleasant Gap can help.
Put out 1,000 people in the 20 years I've been doing this, and many have done very, very well with it. And again, it's opportunity. There are doctors out there doing this. I recently had an FBI retiree do this. I had a fellow who was 25 years chemist, and he came. I've had lots of computer programmers. They're getting outsourced to India. They can't outsource trucking. You know, you can order all the merchandise you want on the internet. You still got to deliver it on the interstate.
What CPI offers is a full-time 320-hour course that starts the first Monday of every month at a cost of just over $6,000. And they'll make you a Class A CDL driver no matter what your prior experience is.
So we take them from wherever they're at when they walk in the door to at least being safe to be out and move on to the next level. Many companies I place them with have training in addition to that. Last 2 years I was on the road, I was a trainer for that type of company.
So you're covered post-graduation as well, but it's how you get there that's impressive. As CPI just unveiled a $10.5 million transportation training center to go along with its massive 6-acre heavy equipment training center. And for Dave, it's all about getting hands-on experience.
But we actually get them in the truck pretty quick, and we have, as you saw, we have a very large off-road training site, and so we're able to get them in there and do some shifting, get some gears, and get the feel even before they have their permits. Most of the time, things go well with the shifting. If they don't, then I bring them back in here and I really work out the bugs of the coordination. Because you have to double clutch. It's not just push the clutch down, get it out of gear, put it in gear. It's touch the clutch, get it out of gear, let it roll a bit, synchronize, touch the clutch again, put it back in. That gets tricky.
Double clutching can be a pain. I can barely drive a regular stick. But this is what makes CPI great, as they have an indoor driving simulator that comes complete with every driving situation you'll see on the road, with the exception of costly accidents.
Times just pop up in front of you. He's taking off. Good old blue Beamer, yeah, for him and maybe even somebody else behind him.
The program's been such a success that CPI is even looking into expanding the course to a 600-hour diploma program to allow the students to get even more hands-on.
Which is really going to enable me to do hands-on and take care of more issues on the trailer. Right now with our 320-hour format, we really only have time to take care of the driving part. They got a lot to learn in any company they go to based upon what that company does, and that starts with what kind of trailer are they typically pulling. If it's a dry van, that's typically a different kind of freight. If it's a reefer, that's a different kind of situation. If it's a flatbed, that's a different situation. So that program is designed to go even further in that realm. Now we do get a lot of opportunities to do loading. Yeah, we save the school a lot of money. I go to Wilkes-Barre and get steel for the welding shop. We go over to Clearfield and get lumber for the carpentry shop. And that's a great experience for my students. And yeah, it does save the school a lot.
And once you're done, you could be in for a very lucrative payday. like other former students.
For groceries, 4,000. Only taking home 2,200, so we're working on that. But a week, yeah, 20, yeah.
Sounds good to me. For more information, check out cpi.edu. For the center of it all, I'm Andrew Callista.
Sounds great to me, Andrew. For more information, check out cpi.edu. Coming up next, we check out the Metabolic Kitchen. In our next story, some folks at Penn State's Metabolic Kitchen are working hard to understand eating behaviors in children and how they can help them make proper food choices.
Campuses are full of research studies, but in the Metabolic Kitchen and Eating Behaviors Laboratory at Penn State, they are looking to help find ways to help kids eat healthy now so they don't have complications later in life.
We're interested in finding out why children choose the foods that they do and hope that we can use this information to help families and children eat better diets.
To accomplish that goal, they take kids ranging from 3 to 10 years old and study the complete process of how and what a child eats.
One of the things that we're interested in is the effect of food marketing and branding on what children eat and what they choose. For children who are between the ages of 7 and 10, is to come into the lab for 4 different visits, and we are, when they come into the lab with their parents, they'll eat a meal with us, and on one of the occasions, all the foods are packaged with plain packaging. Another time when they come in, we have foods that are packaged with the branding just like they would see at the store, and we're using very common food brands. And then another time when they come in, we have something that looks like it's intended to be for kids. It's got a picture of a cartoon character, which we know is something that marketers like to use. So we're trying to understand if it's the familiarity of the food brand, which we know is something that is very attractive to children, or if it's just something that's colorful and looks like if it's for children. Will that actually be something that makes children like the food more or eat more of it when they're here? We want to find out why some children are more susceptible to food branding than others are.
Sounds complicated, right? But it's really not, as Kathleen explains.
Looking at food brands is a 4-visit study. Now, 3 of the visits are actually completed at mealtime, and they're usually done at dinner time. And they take about an hour each. And then on the 4th visit, children come in and they get a safe procedure called a functional magnetic resonance imaging scan. And that's a brain scan that we do right on the site. And we do that when the child's looking at pictures of food brands, and we can see what their brain looks like when they're actually looking at these different pictures. And this is completely safe. The one thing is the child has to stay very still, and for some children that can be a little bit difficult. And it's also difficult for children who are claustrophobic because the fMRI machine can be very closed in space. So we do ask children before if they're claustrophobic, and we tend not to want to scan those children.
And for the students participating with the studies, they have a message as well.
I like knowing that I can make a difference, and I have a lot of fun with it while I do it. So it's important that everybody knows that the kids have a lot of fun with these studies, and we're always looking for participants.
For the center of it all, I'm Andrew Callista.
If you'd like to learn more about the Food Behavior Lab at Penn State, you can contact them at 814-865-4404. Coming up next, the Nittany Lions enter their first spring camp under new head coach James Franklin. Welcome back to the center of it all. Penn State opened spring practice recently for the 2014 season, and James Franklin met with the media to talk about everything, ranging from position changes to the blue-white game. You might think the first-year Penn State head coach has a long list of goals for the spring. Not so much.
I don't have any goals for how much offense, defense, or special teams we want to put in, how many points we want to score in the spring game, any of those types of things. I just want to get the most we possibly can out of every single day. Like I've said before, the most important thing to me is I want to make sure at the end of this spring that we got great chemistry as an organization. These kids know how much we care about them.
Along with the coaching changes comes some position changes, especially on the offensive line.
We moved Dowry and we have moved Gaia to offensive line. A big part of that is when I looked at the defensive line, we had a 4 deep of scholarship players on the defensive line, basically 4 deep at defensive end, about 3.5 deep at defensive tackles, nose guard and D-tackle. On offensive line, we did not have a 2 deep.
Needless to say, the Nittany Lions are in the midst of learning a new offensive and defensive scheme. and Franklin provides some insight on the learning process.
We get 2 or 3 of the installs in written form to look at before they left for spring break, to have it with them over spring break, and then also video as well. So for example, install 1 of the defense, maybe cover 2, they'll get that in writing exactly what the responsibilities were, but then they'll also get film of examples of that coverage as well.
Bill O'Brien dramatically changed the format of the blue-white game during his brief tenure, and there has been plenty of speculation if the Nittany Lions would even have a spring game this year.
I'd like to have a true game. It's hard to say that at this point just because we'll see where we're at in 15 days. But I think it's more fun for the players. I think it's more fun for the fans. We will probably go a ones versus everybody else type of philosophy, or maybe a ones and twos versus everybody else type of deal. I have a little bit of concern on the O-line. Do we have enough bodies to do that? So it might be a situation where we put the O-line in a different color, and they run from sideline to sideline. That'll get them in shape and get them a lot of reps. But we're going to do everything we possibly can to have a true game.
The blue-white game is scheduled to kick off on April 12th at 1:30 p.m. in Beaver Stadium. When we come back, it's time for a kitchen encounter. Mel Prosciutti is our resident foodie, and she has a new take on an American classic in this week's Kitchen Encounters.
I'm not known as a crock-pot kind of girl, but as a busy mom who raised 3 kids, like a lot of you out there, I've relied on these one-pot wonders more times than I can count. Today, I'm going to show you how to make my family's favorite version of crock-pot chili, along with what just might be the best Southern cornbread you've ever tasted. Let's get started. The beauty of the crock pot is you really do put everything in and walk away for 7 or 8 hours. We're going to start with our wet ingredients. And it's important when you're cooking with a crock pot to follow the recipe. Does it say drained or undrained when you're using cans? Because one of the biggest complaints about the crock pot is that there's too much water in the end product. So if you pay attention to that recipe, you're going to do just fine. I'm adding a big 40-ounce can of kidney beans, a 14-ounce can of diced tomatoes, and 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes. And I didn't drain anything today. Just stir those together. The next thing I'm going to add is my spices, because you want to incorporate your spices into your liquid. So the next thing I have is my chili powder, my salt, my cloves, smoked paprika is one of my secrets, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit, 4 tablespoons. And I'm going to stir my spices into my liquid ingredients. And you really want to give those a good stir, because that's the one thing the crock pot is not going to do for you, is stir your ingredients. Now we're going to add our vegetables. The next complaint about the crock pot is the vegetables end up mushy. Well, when you're crock pot cooking, folks, what you have to do is err on the side of chopping or dicing your vegetables just a little bit bigger than you normally would if you're going to do them on the stovetop. So I've got these sweet potatoes in about a 3/4 of an inch chop, and I'm just going to add all of those. That's 2 large sweet potatoes. And what I've got is 1 large onion. That's a large dice too. And I'm just going to add that to the pot. Now the next complaint about the crock pot is the meat is greasy or stringy or odd textured. So what you have to do is the crock pot can't drain the juice for you. So what you have to do is, if you're adding beef or sausage, and don't be afraid to try this recipe with turkey or chicken. This is 1 pound of ground beef, which I've sauteed on the stovetop, and I've drained it thoroughly, and I'm going to add this to my mixture. Now this looks a little full, but the beauty of this recipe is this is going to cook for 5 hours on low, and there's no grease in here. There's not too much liquid. It's going to turn out to be probably the thickest richest chili that you've ever tasted that has come out of a crock pot. Once these are mixed together a little better off camera, I'm just going to put the lid on this pot and put it on low for about 6 hours. I had a great aunt from South Carolina who taught me a thing or two about cornbread. The first thing you want to start with is a really good cornmeal, and she said she liked yellow better than white because it gave it that really pretty yellow color of corn. So I'm mixing my dry ingredients together here, and I've got cornmeal and salt and baking powder and baking soda, along with a little bit of all-purpose flour. Some Southern cooks don't like to add any all-purpose flour at all, except corn is both a grain and a vegetable, and it contains no gluten. So a little bit of all-purpose flour goes a long way in cornbread. The gluten is what's going to make it rise, and it's going to give you just a little bit of a lighter textured cornbread. So I've stirred together my dry ingredients, and now we're going to mix our wet ingredients together. And I'm making triple cornbread today. And what I have in this bowl is 1 cup of creamed corn, and I'm going to add 1 cup of whole corn kernels that have been well drained. I want a little bit of spice, so I'm adding about 1/4 cup of jalapeno peppers, pickled jalapeno peppers that have been chopped. You can add more or less, or you can leave them out. And if you're a bacon lover, put some bacon bits or some crisply fried little pieces of bacon in your cornbread. And down south they put cracklins in, which is pretty close to bacon. So I'm going to stir these things together. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add sugar. Down south they don't put a lot in. I like mine a little sweeter. I'm using 4 tablespoons. I think it's just the right amount. The next thing, oh, stop me. I'm adding my sugar to the wet ingredients instead of the dry ingredients because I want this to dissolve. I don't want my sugar in with my dry ingredients. I really want to make sure it's fully dissolved. Next thing I'm going to add is 1/2 stick of melted butter. That's classic cornbread style. And if you're not using melted butter, you'll see a lot of Southern cooks using 1/4 cup of bacon drippings. Yes, I said bacon drippings. Everything tastes better with bacon. The next thing is I have 2 beaten eggs, just lightly beaten. They're going into our mix. And 1 cup of buttermilk. Do not, folks, make cornbread with anything else but buttermilk. It's essential. The tang is, you can't duplicate it with regular milk or any other product like evaporated milk. Don't do it to me. Use the buttermilk. So my wet ingredients are stirred together. I'm going to bring my big bowl back, and I'm going to just briefly stir my wet ingredients into my dry ingredients. And I don't want to overmix this or mix it for too long because I've got baking powder and baking soda, and those things act or start to rise the second liquid hits them. So the quicker I can get this into the oven, the better my cornbread's going to be. And there, that's fully mixed, and that's less than 30 seconds. Now I've got an 8-inch by 8-inch baking pan that's been sprayed with no stick spray, and I'm just going to quickly put all of this. Oh, this smells wonderful. If you've never tasted cornbread, it smells good from the minute it goes into the pan. I want to get all these nice big chunks of corn out of here. Now all I'm going to do is put this in a 400-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. And when I come back, it's time to eat. Meet my first crock pot. I got this as a wedding gift back in 1974. In the early days, crock pots were nothing more than a warming tray with a bean pot set on top of them, and they were marketed as bean cookers. In 1970, Rival introduced its version under the crock pot name. Our current crock pots, well, have we come a long way, baby. They're programmable, and you can brown your meat in them too. Nowadays, crockery cookery really is all that it's crocked up to be. For these and all of my recipes, just go to my website.
I got to tell you, folks, that recipe is right up my alley. I have a deep love for sweet potatoes. For all of Mel's recipes, log on to kitchenencounters.typepad.com. It's time to wrap up another edition of The Center of It All. For more content from WHVL, don't forget to check us out on YouTube, and you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We hope that you have a great day.